I am ready.
All right, Mark.
Great.
Mark, my name is Ash Singh. I am indirectly connected to British royalty from their conquering of the Punjab region in North India. I would love to chat to you a little bit about what you're working on, as I am now investing in startups. So, Mark, tell me how you're doing and what you're working on.
Yes, so we started a company called Olvin a few years ago because we discovered there was a gap between the online and the offline world. Basically, if you're an online business, you get a lot of information, you get a lot of data, who's going to your website, where they're connecting from, what are they clicking. But as soon as you close your laptop, it's a bit more tricky. You don't have a lot of information besides your sales data. And a lot of people want to understand, who are the consumers, where do they live, where do they go before and after, but also how they're performing in an area, how their competitors doing. So we decided to come up with a solution that would help brick and mortar businesses understand and forecast offline consumer behavior. And the way we're doing that is by looking at a lot of data. So on a daily basis, we process billions of data points. They come from a variety of sources that we've carefully selected. The main source of data that we use is geospatial data. We have access to about 175 million devices in the US that we enrich with other data sources such as weather, transport, demographic, events, but also variables like COVID, for instance. And this helps us understand where people have been and do not only historical analysis, but also predictive insights. At the moment, you can access the data through our SaaS platform called Almanac, but we're also building data feeds and an API that's coming soon. We're starting at a price of $249 a month. We've raised about $4.5 million. We're closing our seed round right now. So looking for another $500,000. And then at the end of this year, we'll go for Series A, where we'll raise between $10 and $50 million.
Got it. Excellent. Mark, I thank you for sharing that. Happy to have another discussion. So, Mark, thank you for sharing your pitch. You are going to get some feedback in the chat. But Mark, I had a question for you. I'll tell you where kind of my mind is. And as you know, for the elevator pitches, part of these sessions are authentic feedback from the crowd. Okay. Everyone that's giving you questions and feedback are here to level you up because we want your success. And what I always, in my journey in pitching investors, I always found that, the short answer I used to get when they didn't like my idea, they would say, hey, just come back to me when you have a little bit more traction. All right. But I never really understood what was going on in their head. Okay. And so part of this session is to let you know kind of where my head was at with all the different elements that you're working on. Right. And so I'll tell you the questions that I have. If I understand, right, with Olvin as a platform, and I'm going to re-summarize a little bit so the audience can learn a little bit more about what you're doing. But what you're saying is that in the digital world, there's a lot of information, but in the offline world, people do not have enough of that information. And you have the geospatial data where people are moving, weather patterns, news events, all of these things kind of come together. And that enables you to provide offline companies with a little bit more information. Okay. And so my question to you, Mark, is that when you're enabling somebody to do that, how does this make an impact for somebody, right? And Mark, let's just use the example of a grocery store, something that everyone can relate with, right? A grocery store is an offline platform. Typically, what do they do? And if they use the Olvin platform and they're paying $249 per month, how does it improve their bottom line, right? Because I wanted to know what you can, your secret sauce, I get, right? You're putting all these components together. They're digging in. I wanted to know who's using the data. I'm assuming it's the marketing team. But the question is how does this drive real impact for a grocery store, for example?
Absolutely. Just to step back as well. So we're currently working on two industries. So retail, which probably we can put the grocery in that example, but also commercial real estate. And right now we have three main use cases. The first one is staff scheduling, and it could help, for instance, a grocery store understanding how many people should be in the right grocery, the right time. but also in the right place. So, for instance, in the US, people need to submit more than 3 weeks ahead how many people should be in their stores. So we can provide you some data so that you can know up to 90 days ahead how many people are likely to be in your store, and you can break that down to an hourly basis so that you can optimize basically the number of people that should be in your store.
Got it.
For instance, if there's, I don't know,
Understood.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. So you have a manpower prediction engine. I got that. Okay.
Yeah. So that's one use case. Another use case that it could be useful for them is stock assortment, making sure they have the right product. So based on our data, we can tell you the type of customers that are coming to your store, where do they live, but also how many people, again, are likely to come, so that you can probably cross-reference that with your internal data, understand that usually, I don't know, in the month of April, people like to buy, I don't know, apples because it's a season of apples, and you've done your marketing analysis on that, and then you can base basically your stock assortment on our data as well.
But Marc, wouldn't a grocery store have something similar to this already? Would they have something I think, or even a retail, like if you're selling jeans, right? You might get like certain jeans that are more for the spring, and jean shorts in the summer. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they would have something like this. So how do they use your platform with what they have, right? How does that work?
Yes. So usually they have a lot of internal data, and it's most of the time sales data. So having predictive footfall analysis gives another layer of data in order, for instance, for demand planners to really start forecasting stock assortment, for instance. So it gives you another layer of confidence into your forecasts.
So what you're saying is that existing grocers don't use geospatial data that well.
They potentially do, but again, it's very hard to access. It's extremely expensive, and it also requires a lot of people to have expertise from a data science team, or having an expert that takes the data, collects the data, and does all the work on that. We're doing all the heavy lifting for you, so you can just connect to the platform and get access to that data in just a couple of clicks.
So, what's interesting to me when you think about this, you talked about weather, right? And I know in a lot of markets, weather has been a lot more erratic over the last 2 years, right? And so I think that, the idea of real time, prediction on elements like this is valuable. What's the third use case? Marc, you talked about 2 use cases. Give me the third one.
I was going to go through that. So the last use case we have right now is, for instance, understanding where to open or close, for instance, a grocery store. So that's site selection. So based on our data, imagine you're the owner of multiple grocery stores, and you want to see, okay, well, after COVID, we've realized that most of our consumers are going away, or we've had a dip in the consumers that are coming to our stores. I'm going to close one store, but where should I open the new one? So you can use our data to look at sites and start understanding, what's the ranking of the site, and looking at, okay, that might be a good site to purchase. Or you can also look at areas, and then based on the demographics and the type of visitors that you have, you can start looking at the optimal point to set up that new grocery.
Got it. And if we do all these things right, coming back to the grocer, right? At least for the first 2 use cases, one was around stock prediction, manpower. How much more efficient am I going to be operating my retail store like a groceries chain? You get what I'm saying? Like, I want to know, I want to know the level of impact, right? Because you're asking for $250 a month, which doesn't seem like a lot of money.
Yeah.
But what I always like to understand is, how much of an impact is this, right? Is this something that, the CEO of a grocery chain should know about, Marc, right? And I want to, you know what I mean? So what does this mean, in terms of manpower optimization with your manpower prediction engine? You have a stock prediction engine, what does this mean for efficiency, right? How does it affect my bottom line as a retailer? And you can give me some estimates, but if it works well, right? If people aren't getting their manpower, or they're not getting their stock prediction right, how much do they save on their bottom line in terms of making sure that they have the right amount of manpower, okay, right? And more importantly, they're not wasting money from a stock perspective. And we've realized supply chain, people need to get smarter in predicting the amount of stock that they're going to be purchasing based on time.
That's a good question, and it's quite hard to assess because obviously there are different layers to measure. Like how do you save cost on, for instance, having the right people in the store? So maybe one day you'll pay for only one person being at the cashier versus another day having three people on a cashier. So I think it all depends on how accurate your current predictions are and by how much we can enhance your current prediction. So we offer between 75 and 85% accuracy on our forecasts. And that's hopefully giving you more room to better plan your staff and better plan your stock assortment. In terms of by how much, it would depend on, for instance, if we look at the stock assortment, how much are you wasting, or how much opportunity is missed because you don't have the right product at stock. So that's probably a good exercise that we'd be happy to do and look at your historical performance and see how we can improve that.
Understood. So, Marc, would you like me to pitch Olvin back to you?
Yes, we'd love to.
Right. I'm going to pitch your idea back. You're looking for, there's a bit of a capital raise right now, right? 500,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna try to address the stuff, the questions that I asked. Okay. I'm gonna pitch it from that perspective, okay, and see how we go. Right, I'm going to talk about the manpower and the stock, and see if I can kind of get a little bit more granular with you. Okay, sure. I'm going to see, because you did mention that it's tough to talk about. I'm going to try to talk about it. Okay, with zero preparation. Okay. So this might be a good pitch. It might be terrible, but it's okay because I do not mind embarrassing myself for startups and startup learning. All right. So Marc, what's going to happen is you get to introduce yourself. Okay, Marc, you can be anyone you've ever wanted to be. You can also be yourself if you like, but this is a role play, and I am going to pitch the Olvin platform to you. All right. So go ahead. You can introduce yourself, and we'll get started.
Hi, my name is Marc. I just exited a company. I have a bit of spare cash at the moment. I'm looking to do a few angel investments. Can you talk to me a bit more about Olvin and what you guys are doing?
Great. Marc, thank you for making the time today. My name is Ash Singh, and I'm part of the Olvin team. As you know, in the digital space, there's a lot of information that people have access to make decisions, and e-commerce has grown a lot. But you also might have realized and heard that almost 50% of shopping malls are going to close in the United States over the next 5 to 10 years. The reason for this is that retailers, all right, do not have the same access to the information, and there's so much more wastage, and this is forcing them to go out of business because they're being outcompeted by the digital world. And so our platform, the Olvin platform, is actually a tool that's going to help level up the intelligence of retailers. And what we do is we leverage different types of data, geospatial data, weather data, consumer trends, Google trends, and we package this all together to allow a retailer to become more competitive. There's a couple of areas that we're very good at. The first one is leveraging all of this information and data to make predictions on how much manpower you need. Through the journey, we improve the efficiencies of manpower by between 15 and 20% for retailers. We also leverage our tools to be able to help them predict the stock. And through the process, we lower their wastage that people have for retailers by up to 20%. This process is all done using our AI engine that we've developed over the last couple of years, and it only costs a retailer $250. We think this is going to have a huge impact in the retail space, and we feel that this is going to be an essential resource for retailers to ensure they remain competitive in the world we live in today. I want to chat to you more about the $500,000 we're looking to raise to take this to the next level. Would be happy to chat to you over a coffee, Marc. Thank you.
Great. Let's do that. I'll send you a calendar invite.
Thank you. Marc, how was that?
That was good. I really enjoyed it. It was great. Different angle. I like the way you packaged it. I think it's really good to definitely walk them through a use case, and in this particular case, tailoring it to a retailer makes it very compelling, I think.
Yeah, Marc, I kept away from site selection because I felt like it's a different department, and so there was a reason why I didn't bring it up. I just wanted to talk about like manpower and stock, right? And I tried to kind of bring those together. And if I had a couple of more seconds, I would have combined that together and said, hey, we have a prototype running with Levi's jeans, okay? And our impact, our store-to-store comparison is like, 10% on the bottom line, right? It's getting that one case study in place. But I was specifically not talking about site selection because I felt that it's a different department. And I wanted to zero in on your current round of funding, right? Because, when we think about the seed round or the current stage that you're at in terms of your journey, I always try to like knock it out of the park with a specific market, segment. And I feel like you might be talking to two different people when you're selling. Site selection is maybe a different group than the manpower and stock selection. So that was just a on the fly change that I made, Marc, but it was done purposefully.
Oh, that's great. But it still raises a question of which kind of pitch do you do then for somebody that's interested in both, and how do you
could be both.
Your 1 minute
yes.
get everything.
So it's about, and the reason I did it because you might be speaking to the owner of the grocery chain, right? Okay. But what I did is I my persona, and to make it real, because, one is when you speak to an investor, they kind of want to know that you're going to make a huge impact, right? And so for me, site selection is interesting from a growth perspective, but I was sharing earlier, I painted a scenario that the retailers are struggling to survive. Do you get what I'm saying? That was my story arc. And because that's the story arc, I wanted them to get to a competitive stage. Growth is a great situation, but that's kind of, if I'm using the Olvin product for a couple of like a year, right? And it's working really well, then I can also go and use the Olvin Plus product that's going to help me with site selection, and I can use it to conquer, growth pieces. But as part of my story arc did not bring in the growth component because it wasn't relevant to the story arc that I was painting today with you, right? It was more about survival rather than growth, right? But it's always about who you're speaking to, right? Like I just spoke to Roger Federer, right? At least somebody that was acting as Roger Federer, right? You just got to kind of play it out. But I was thinking about the use case of the general manager of the grocery store, right? That one location, and how they can kind of get interested in what you're doing because that's what they're thinking about, right? They're not thinking about scale, right? So, but love what you're doing, Marc. I mean, thank you for your time, and, look forward to helping you on the next steps of this journey, your fundraising and all the other components that you have. This is great. Retail has really suffered over the last couple of years, right? Yeah. And it's great that we can bring some technology, some process to help them deliver more efficiently, right? And ensure that we can ensure job growth, because retail is such a powerful and important avenue for jobs. And it's great that you're working on your platform. So I want to thank you again, and look forward to our next steps with you. Thank you very much, Marc.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you.